Hi Matt, this is Eric and Ryan Roten from Make a Wood Sign. We're going to make an Apple Watch Ultra charging station, and they're going to show me how to do it by hand.
That's right.
Y'all ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, so we printed this out. We're going to transfer this onto the board.
And this is glossy paper like on the back of a label, right? Is what we
That's
use?
correct. Basically, you have any labels, Avery labels, or any kind of labels, this is the part you would throw away.
Inkjet printer and printed this reverse, and then that ink is actually wet.
Yep,
So if you touch it, it's going to smear.
yep, and don't ask me how I know that. Like I do it all the time.
So you're just putting pressure on the backside to make the ink get into the wood grain.
That's exactly right. That's exactly the process. So I normally go a couple of different directions.
Oh, that is sweet.
It works out really well.
That is cool.
Yeah, because this ink is wet when we put it on. It's still wet when it's on there, and then when it dries, it rubs off really easily on your hand if you're not careful. So we found that putting 1 or 2 coats of this on just kind of seals it in. Then it wouldn't rub off on your hands.
So that the next step, start cutting?
I think it's time to make some sawdust.
So starting out, how do you start something like this?
So what I like to do is I like to get what I perceive to be the most difficult stuff done first, because I always like to get the hard stuff done first. And the hard stuff on here probably is going to be this. These are the tiniest lines. Another thing that I like to do is always have my artwork close to me in case there's any question, so I can look back at this and reference. And then I was like, oh, okay. Like it would be really easy to see that as an 8, like, but oh no, that's an O or a 0. Gotcha. So that's one thing. And we start with this bit, which is our carving liner. This is the one that does the tiniest detail, comes down to a really fine point. And then we have another bit that comes down to a point, but it's not as detailed as this. And I think the profile bit and the carving liner will do all of this.
And this base here, where'd you get this at?
This thing, there's a company out of Arizona that, no, I'm just kidding. We make these. This is a base that my father and I developed that allows you to use a trim router, which normally doesn't come with handles. It allows you to not only be able to control it without having to do this, but it allows you to do the most important thing, which is have contact with the board and the base at the same time. This gives you a way to control that you just wouldn't normally have with a trim
So you
router.
hit those fine details a lot easier.
Yeah, just gives you a lot more stability. We make bases for all different kinds of routers, and then we make bigger ones for full-size routers.
Because I didn't have a Forstner bit big enough, Mr. Eric hand carved the circle for the phone charger. And then I took it over to the drill press where I did have the correct size Forstner bit for the Apple Watch charger.
So the reason we brush that like that is to make sure all of the little chips and everything are out of the groove. Otherwise, then when you spray it and you sand it off, if those chips then fall out, then you got a white spot.
The spray paint we used was Rust-Oleum Flat Black Primer, and you want flat so that it's not glossy down in those crevices. Here I'm just using tuck tape, and this is for like epoxy molds and that sort of thing. I'm kind of hoping that this creates a barrier so that I can put the color in and it doesn't bleed or run into the other areas where I don't want the color to go. First thing we're gonna do is mix up this white epoxy, and we're going to use an old login epoxy art resin, and this will set up in about a couple of hours versus deep pour, which takes a long time. For this art resin, we're mixing 1:1, which means however much of part A you put in, you'll put the same amount of part B. The most important thing is to get this very well stirred. Once that's mixed, I'm going to add white pigment to this one, and we're going to put those at the top of the mountains for snow as well as in the stars. I think that's going to look really nice. I'm just going to use the syringe, a new syringe, and pull enough white in there and just fill all this in as best I can. For the blue, I'm just going to use this deep blue color. I'm adding quite a bit more than I usually would because it's such a small fill. I want that color to kind of shine through, or at least that's my hope. Once I did that, I tried to figure out a better way to get it in these small lines. I do have these tiny tips that come with CA glue. I tried that and it worked okay, but it kept coming off the end of the syringe. So I ended up just using the syringe itself and trying to do the best I can. Once that's set, we'll be able to sand this off and hopefully we'll be able to see that color. So originally I cut the piece of walnut long so I could adjust it when the swatch got here, because when we started building this, I didn't have the watch. I was able to lay the watch out and decide where I wanted to cut, and then I just took it to the miter saw and cut each end off. Just kind of centered the whole graphic on there. Then I used a 1/8 inch round over bit all over the top just to soften that edge. This is an orange oil and tung oil mix. This is one of my favorite finishes of late because it just looks so good. It's a natural finish, so food safe, that kind of stuff. And when you see it hit the epoxy, you're going to see it really come to life, especially down here on this blue. Check this out. It's just a white scrub pad that just helps get it into that wood grain. A little bit of stuff goes a very long way. And it smells good because it has that orange oil in it. Look at that. God, it looks good. I'll do about 3 coats of this. I'll let this dry for an hour or 2 and then come back and put another coat, let it dry, another coat. Now it's time to install the chargers into this base. This is super simple. For the watch charger, I'm just going to use a little bit of an MDF with a hole saw because I have the exact right size hole saw. I'm going to cut that hole and then we're going to just plug that into the back. And for the watch charger, I just took a scrap piece of walnut. I used the charger itself to trace out around for the general size of it. Took it over to the bandsaw and got it in a rough size. Then I used my sander to get it to fit just perfect. Once that is a perfect fit, I'm going to use hot glue. It's not really the optimal choice here, but it will work to hold in those chargers so that if anything should go wrong, if I have a charger fail, anything like that, I can always easily swap those out by just peeling that hot glue away. But that hot glue will hold them in place very securely for a very long time, so I'll be able to charge and uncharge. These cables are about 1/8 inch thick, so we routed that groove 1/8 of an inch deep so that they allow this to sit flat on the nightstand and those cables won't interfere with anything come out of the back. The reason I want them to go out of the top is because of the way it orients on my nightstand. Will be laying like this and it'll go just straight over the edge and into the plug. So of course you can route those grooves any which way you want for your orientation on your nightstand. Now the moment of truth. I'm gonna lay my watch up there and you see, boom, it comes to life. That's exactly what I wanted. Now, I'm gonna try the phone next. And there it is. What I love about this, I have a CNC in the shop, but a lot of our viewers don't have the budget for a CNC, or they're really not interested in taking up that much space. And this looks almost like, it still has that human touch, which I love, but it looks almost like a CNC done it, and you was able to do it with your product that you have.
Yeah, and that's the thing that a lot of our people follow us because, again, they don't have a budget for a CNC, and they don't, they're afraid of computers, and they don't think they can figure that out. But they all have a router, and you can get a base and with the right bits, and anybody can learn to do it. It really, it makes it really simple. And then a lot of people that start freehand routing, eventually they do get a CNC if they're doing a lot of production.
Right.
But then if something goes wrong with the CNC, they've always got the skill of doing it with a hand router.
Yeah,
so it kind of is the best of both worlds for a lot of people.
Right. And so if you were building something for a customer on a cutting board or something like that, you'd be able to engrave their last name or their logo or whatever.
Or the stovetop covers, or just, so there's endless numbers of ways of things, not just signs, but other stuff as well.
And one of the things about when you're doing, freehand stuff is having the right, like the base plate. Without the base plate, those lines would be nowhere near as straight as they are.
Yeah.
The base plate, the right bits, all that stuff, and it really makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really does.
If you're interested in checking out one of these base plates that fits your router, because they fit tons of different ones, I'll put a link in the description below to their store. You can go check them out. I love this phone and Apple Watch Ultra charging stand because now I have a place to display this when it's not in use, and it kind of gives me that kick in the pants I need, chase the adventure, basically the theme of the Apple Watch Ultra. So I really enjoyed making this, and Ryan and Eric did a fantastic job hand carving this. You don't even need a CNC to get something custom like this. It's pretty cool. Well, this project would not have been possible without Eric and Ryan, man. Thank you guys so much. And if you ever want to learn how to carve a sign by hand like this, they did this one and they did this one as well as the project you saw today. They have a channel devoted all about teaching you how to do that.
That's what we do. We don't do a whole lot, but that we know.
Yeah,
we know how to do that.
They're very good at it. So y'all go check them out. There'll be a card at the end, and go watch them and link in the description to their channel.